Have you caught yourself looking at a bunch of new release watches and thinking, I'm really not sure if I like watches anymore? If you have, you're not alone. These are the reasons I think that's happening. Probably the main reason it's so hard to find a watch that really gets you good is simply there are so many watches. Every man, woman and their pet hamster seems to have a watch brand these days, and of course they all need a USP to stand out from the crowd. So whether they're inspired by a cornflake or came in an LSD-fueled dream, it gets to the point that before you've even got to the watch itself, you've already been drowned in a wave of thick, sticky bullshit. And there's this thing called the paradox of choice. You'd think more options would be better for all, but no. Our puny human brains can only handle so much, good or bad. If it's in a pile bigger than we can comfortably fit into our noggins, we'll find ourselves swiftly going on to standby. Let's flip that around from the watch brand's perspective too. It's easy for me to say what I want to about all this because I'm not accountable for any of it, really. There's no board or shareholders who are going to tell me the thing I said lost them millions. Being a watch brand, however, and it would make sense to give the people what they want. Except I don't think we even know what we want. If they make it in 40mm, we'll want it in 38. If they make it in 38mm, we'll go and buy a plastic version instead, even though we said we hated it. I can imagine being a watch brand and getting us lot to come to a consensus is like getting a teenager to bring their parents along on a date. Why are there so many watches? Really, because it's easier than ever to make one. You, as a motivated individual, can, with a little money, make your own watch, find suppliers, get something designed, beep boop, you're getting a watch. Technology and communication have made opportunities like this so accessible that virtually anyone can do it. Just like anyone can make a video and upload it to YouTube. It doesn't have to be any good. And likewise, making a watch doesn't make it good. Greedy margins, cutting corners, aspirations that dwarf actual talent. All these hurdles sit in between those guys making their own watches and us with our cash in our hands, waiting to buy something. And when something's easier to make, it can be more efficient to make more of them and see what sticks. So rather than a single piece being the life's work of a passionate brand, they can simply churn them out and hope something catches. Technology is really the best and worst thing to happen, well, ever. Better technology creates more opportunity. Anti-magnetic, frictionless silicon escapements, carbon fiber cases. But as Superman once said, with great technology comes great responsibility to not make a crap watch. Or something. Million-axis milling machines and 3D printing can produce shapes that would have our ancestors filling their pants in fear and awe, but as Pepsi's latest mango Pepsi drink has given a stark warning, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Having all that technology and being able to make anything out of anything should in theory yield the best of everything, but the reality is quite simply that there's more chance of making a hot, steaming mess. If you're like me, then there's a whole bunch of watches you had on your list to buy when you were in your teens or 20s, and there was a figure in your head you needed to earn to get there. And now you're at that figure, you've been dismayed to find the watches you can actually afford are not the ones you expected. Inflation has bent us over a barrel and stuck hot pokers up our backsides. It has kicked our mothers and told our friends about that one time we accidentally let out a little bit of poo when we sneezed. It has royally sought to turn our dreams into a cruel joke for it to slap us about the face with. So the watches you can afford just don't feel like the ones you expected to afford. The solution? Build a time machine? Modern watches may suck, but hopefully my channel doesn't. If you want to support it, you can by picking up some merch below the video. I also write books, which you'll find the link to in the description. Thank you so much. It means the world to me. When I was just a lad discovering watches for the first time, sure, people had heard of Rolex and a lot of people had them, but generally speaking, the watch community and those interested in watches were limited to me, Colin, and a handful of others on the internet. If you had one watch, fine. But if you had two or more, you were categorized into the same class of being as stamp collectors and train spotters. That's changed, and so the opportunity for watchmakers to sell watches has changed too. There's a bunch of people out there who couldn't care less about what's inside the watch, so long as it gets recognized, or makes some money, or shows off their wealth. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I think there are bigger moral fish to fry, but it significantly decreases the chances of most watches appealing to you specifically. Depending on how much effort goes into the watch and how much it costs, there will be a whole variety of opportunities for the brand to turdify the design. I've said this many a time, and I still think it's the most overlooked aspect of making a watch. Not quality, not complication, not even size specifically, but proportions. Many watchmakers rely on existing movements, and those movements will, without significant modification, be fixed in the position of their displays, and that really limits any watch created with them to a set size. We've all seen chronograph watches that are trying their best to mimic a Venn diagram. But generally, I think good proportions are so hard that we are just more likely to see watches out there that feel awkward than not. It's an incredibly hard thing to quantify, but when it's right, everyone knows. Another aspect of technology and connectivity that is both excellent and awful is that it's very easy to gather data on pretty much anything. Google most likely has a profile on who you are and what you do, which they will likely use to one day build an exact clone of you to switch you out with so you can be turned into glue. But for now at least, the availability of data makes it so much easier for watch brands to take less risks. 9 out of 16 people prefer their dials in twilight blue number 19. Studies show that 63% of people like it when the power reserve lasts to hump day. You can build a watch for the people, by the people, very easily. But how to gather data on feeling and emotion? What's the coefficient for getting a tingle in your balls when a watch just looks so good? Going down that route is risky. There's a chance of creating something iconic, but it's slim. Much greater chance of failure. Best just to turn the watch industry into the Spotify top 10. I don't know about you, but when I look back at vintage watches, they all just look so right to my eyes. Even the brands you've never heard of that go for $50 at auction, they just look and feel right. You could call it nostalgia, rose-tinted for an era that film and TV has told me was better, but I think it's something else, and it ties into exactly the same reason that I don't buy any of those watches. Durability. So many of those watches look so good, and they also look like a firm cough would turn them into dust. We have an expectation of a certain level of peace of mind with a modern watch, and that means they have to be built sturdier. There's no technology out there that can take the delicate designs of the past with their skinny lugs and plastic crystals and get them to stand up to the abuse we expect a modern watch to take. The biggest reason I think modern watches suck isn't so much because they do, but because the ones that don't are all sold out, gone, vanished. May as well not exist. We see these pictures of beautiful watches, hear about how wonderful they are, and then promptly have the door slammed in our faces at checkout. Browsing the consolation prizes is never going to be a first-rate experience, even if those watches are still pretty damn good. There's a watch you want, you've got the cash to get it, and yet you just can't have it. Sure, a little bit of a wait didn't hurt anyone, but when that wait is indefinite, it just makes you feel like you're somehow not worth it, like if you were, they would find a way to get you one. And that really sucks more than anything. We got into watches because they make us happy, and so when they don't, it really feels like the end of the road. It's not all doom and gloom though. There are so many watches out there that suck for a whole variety of reasons, but if you're willing to put the effort in and look further afield, you'll see there's even more great watches out there too. But what about you? What do you attribute to the reason modern watches suck? Let me know down in the comments below. Please also like and subscribe, and make sure to rearrange your neighbour's flower bed in the dead of night. Goodbye.